From a clerk in Dadri to Pehlu Khan in Alwar to an incident just 3 days ago in which Tamil Nadu government officials were assaulted in Rajasthan for transporting cows legally for their animal husbandry department. These attacks have now become mind-numbingly familiar. Murderous mobs calling themselves Gau Rakshaks going after people. Now, 65 retired bureaucrats have taken the unprecedented step of writing a letter to the Modi government expressing their concern. The letter warns against rising intolerance and majoritarianism and calls for an end to mob justice, hyper-nationalism and fear, which they say has barred debate and dissent. Well, two former bureaucrats who are signatories to that letter join us on Left, Right and Centre tonight. We have with us from Kolkata tonight, Jawahar Sarkar, former CEO of Prasar Bharati. We're also going to be joined by Aruna Roy in a short while from now. We're also being joined by J.S. Rajput, former director of the NCERT, Shiv Vishwanathan, sociologist, and here in the studio with me, Sharadindu Mukherjee, member of the Indian Council of Historical Research. But Jawahar Sarkar, let me begin with you. As a bureaucrat, you worked under different governments, perhaps most recently under this very government. Just what is different now, so different that's made you write this letter along with your other retired colleagues?
You see,
yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
we are used to handling law and order situations. We know that these are bound to happen, but this series that's happening now is seriously of worry to us. This sort of series of attacks on particular issues in different states ruled by the same party cannot happen without either concurrence or acquiescence. The whole issue is that we need to put a message across that this is just not done. We have witnessed a lot of aberrations. We have witnessed law and order, but this is just not a simple case of law and order.
This is not a simple case of law and order, but Jawahar Sarkar, are you saying, is it your contention that these events have been manifesting themselves only after the present government came to power, after May 2014, that is?
This type of incident, these types of incidents are happening only after that. We have had violence on issues of caste, on creed, on other issues, but this particular issue of intolerance on let us say the cow or other issues, similar issues that occur.
Yes, we seem to be having some problems with that line. We'll try and go back to Jawahar Sarkar in a moment. But let me take this across to Sharadindu Mukherjee joining us here in the studio. These are very strong terms that this letter has been couched in, and these are people who are used to handling law and order situations. These are very eminent retired bureaucrats who presumably are saying these things with some degree of responsibility. They say, and I have their letter here with me, it appears that there is a growing climate of religious intolerance that is aimed primarily at Muslims. In Uttar Pradesh, in the run-up to the elections, there was an odious and frankly communal comparison made. They talk about their deep sense of disquiet. They say vigilantism is now widespread. Are their fears at all justified?
Firstly, I'm sorry to say that this letter is written by some retired bureaucrats. It looks like a badly drafted JNU pamphlet. So I don't know who has done this. What is happening? These are very few scattered, isolated cases much more than this is happening in India for so many years, if not for centuries, you know. So basically, it's a list of concocted grievances, and
a few scattered, isolated instances, you are saying.
Yeah, yeah.
And you say this with responsibility when there have been repeated attacks by vigilante groups, which even the government has conceded that there have been several attacks.
Very few and far between a country like this, because you see, when things happened before Modi took over, these are not reported in the media. No one takes no note of that. Why? You see, if Mr. Johar Sarkar belongs to Bengal cadre, if I remember correctly, Bengal, the whole border of Bangladesh, West Bengal, is full of infiltrators. And they have been encouraged by the successive left-front government to settle there. There's a major demographic imbalance there. The lawlessness, the Hindu refugees from Bangladesh, East Pakistan, who have settled, they have to abandon the villages. Lot of studies have been done. Same thing is happening in Assam also. Look, please let me complete. Assam, the situation is so bad that the governor of Assam is a very respected army officer, General Sinha, had a report.
Okay.
Now, nothing like that's been done. You see, I know lots of people in the police and IS in West Bengal, my students, my colleagues, you know, and they say that this has been done by the ministers, by the officials. They open the gate so that they get the votes.
So you're saying that by opening the gates, they have in fact pretty much invited the Gaurakshaks. Okay.
The census reports show that. Now, Gaurakshaks may be bad. That's a bad thing. Fine, I don't justify that. But this
Shiv Vishwanathan, come in on this. You know, the point that seems to be made over here is that these are isolated instances.
Black propaganda.
All right. I don't think Shiv Vishwanathan can hear me. I'm going to try and go back to Johar Sarkar if I can. Johar Sarkar, you know, one other point. You're saying the letter says any critique of this government is now being reduced to a binary. If you're not with the government, you are anti-national. I want to ask you, if you're saying this government is authoritarian and not open to any form of criticism, what is it that you are hoping to achieve with this letter?
You just saw the specimen of response that we just heard. The issue was diverted from cow vigilantes who are repeatedly killing people, threatening people to some border issue in Assam.
I don't
know what is
are being
I
encouraged.
didn't interrupt you when you were speaking. Give him the courtesy of finishing his point.
Now, there is no monopoly of nationalism by a particular group that has suddenly been in power. We are all nationalists, and we don't need to carry our identity cards to prove it. We are reaching that state. Now, this particular term about using JNU, you know what? There's another report today that the Ministry of Education, HRD, is considering merging autonomous authorities with JNU. Now, JNU, what is their bugbear? JNU has always been, like Presidency College, like certain other enlightened institutions, bastions of free speech. Now, you have to learn to accept free speech in a democracy. You can't have people who are ill-informed come and divert attention to other issues and occupy posts where they brand the whole lot of people who have served the country for the last 30, 40 years in one brush. This is not on. You can't hold a national post and talk in an irresponsible manner. Nationalism is not the monopoly of any particular group. We are all nationalists, and we don't need to prove our credentials to a new group.
All right, Aruna Roy also joining us at this point on the program. Aruna Roy, we've just been talking about this letter and its contents, but I want to ask you this. Do you expect a response? And if you don't get a response, what will be your next move?
Actually, the important thing is not the response.
Yes.
If there is a response, it's a good thing.
Yes.
But the main thing is to make our collective position clear in the public domain.
Yes.
I think for a long time now, people have been quite keen on listening to some kind of reasoned debate and some kind of logical, sequential thought. Because most of the time, there have been just knee-jerk reactions, there have been slogans, there's been a lot of jargon thrown around, but there's been no cohesive, constructive thought and a critique of the present government. So I think we are mainly talking to the citizens of India. That's what I feel. If the government is wise, it will hear us and respond.
Yes.
If it isn't, it's a huge class of political education for all of us. And I wouldn't be pessimistic if the government doesn't respond, because in the last 3 years, it has barely responded to any of the things that we have said to the government, whether it is in terms of the NREGA or the right to information or food security or pensions or any of these critical factors, or even including the very controversial UID. We have got absolutely no response from the government. It's been completely silent. And in a democracy, of course, it's extremely disturbing. But I think the fact that most of us do not exercise our right to speak and are scared at the moment, because fear rules us now. And so it's a very good thing that senior people from the civil service and people like me who were in the club for a very brief period, an amphibian really, because partly in and partly out, but those of us who have spoken have done a great service to Indian democracy and to the freedom of speech.
Okay, fair point. I just want to go back to a point that was being made by Sharadindu Mukherjee over here, who says that, we are looking at isolated instances of vigilantism, of, by so-called Gorakshaks, which one would say are nothing short of murderous mobs, actually. Mr. Mukherjee, can you give examples of so many people being lynched in the name of cow with such impunity at any other time in India's history?
How many cases? Tell me, how many people have been lynched? Very unfortunate, very tragic, but how many people have been lynched? How many times these distinguished bureaucrats have talked about the ethnic cleansing of Kashmir Valley? The entire Hindu population was thrown out.
Again, sir,
that's related matter. You are
diverting the issue. I asked you a straight question, sir.
I said, tell me, how many cases are there? How many cases are there? Tell me.
That attacks against
Ankita, tell me, how many cases are there of lynching?
Sir, you are again talking about isolated instances, and therefore
so
I am
how many
asking
cases are there? Few cases are there, very, very unfortunate. I can tell you hundreds of cases which happens. Look at the newspapers. How many places Hindus are being killed? Look at the newspaper last 10 years, 5 years, you look at it.
You're just proving the point that's being made by these bureaucrats about deflections, about diversions, about generally reducing the the discourse, the level of the discourse. Jawahar Sarkar, this letter also talks about
the letter. Frivolous letter, you know.
The letter talks about trolling, threats, online intimidation of activists, journalists, writers, and
to demoralize the government.
Part of an agenda to demoralize the government.
Yes.
I'm going to take it
across.
I'm going to take it across to Jawahar Sarkar and Aruna Roy. Let them respond to that. We've heard the member of ICHR on this panel saying that this sounds like a JNU pamphlet, that this is part of an agenda to demoralize the government. Your response?
I have not been acquainted with this gentleman, though I have studied a lot of history and I do write on history. So, I mean, but there we can let that pass. He must be from somewhere. The point is that on the question of demoralization, have you ever had an instance in past history where civil servants as a group across the nation have to come up and plead with the government, have to show the yellow card to the government that this is not on? You can't go on encouraging lynching. If you are not encouraging, then stop it. It's happening only in those states. So there is a message of intolerance. You look at Twitter, look at my handle on Twitter, the way I'm being slaughtered by semi-literate Pachwi passes. Look at the way they have taken over every media. What is happening? The free space, the plurality. The diversity of India is now being set to be homogenized by a group in the name of nationalism. I have proof about a particular group owing allegiance to the group that we are talking about that had opposed the Indian national flag.